Today I'd like you to meet a very special guy. He's about 2 foot tall and covered in fur, and his name's Rolo. He and his human, Claire, join us to talk about his important work in hospitals and other spaces as a therapy dog. So, Claire, what role does Rolo play in hospitals?
Each time we go, he does different things every time. We don't know what we're going to see. Sometimes it's distraction, sometimes it's helping with rehabilitation, sometimes it's speech and language. For example, one time, if we're in the stroke ward, perhaps, we talk to somebody, a patient, and they may have friends there as well. And one time when we went, the friend said, when we left, to the patient, that's the most you've ever spoken since you've been in hospital, because he's not medical, he's not judgmental, and people are at ease with him and they want to know about him, so they want to ask questions. Other things, particularly in the stroke ward, to do with rehabilitation, the act of stroking him or giving him a bit of a treat is all good for their physical rehabilitation. One time there was a lady who wanted to know if he wanted the cheese from her sandwich because she'd finished her sandwich at lunchtime, and I said, well, that would be lovely, the cheese would be really nice. And she said, well, do you want to take it? And I said, well, how about you take the cheese out and give it to him, because then that's good for everybody then. Without her thinking about what she was doing physically, because she wanted to give him the treat, she then took the cheese out, which was obviously really good for why she was in hospital. Where he helps with distraction, particularly with children, and it's a bit of normality in the hospital. And also people who are missing their own dogs. They want to ask about him. They love showing me pictures of their dogs. So it's a whole variety of things. Sometimes with the children it's distraction. For example, if somebody's having some sort of procedure, we can sometimes be the other side of it. And then I get the person to perhaps check if I've clipped his hair properly, or if there are any bits missing, or if I need to do a bit more, or just to get the mind off what was going on the other side of them. So lots of variety.
What kind of reactions does Rolo get from patients when he comes to visit them?
Mostly they're really, really happy. Sometimes when they're on their phones, they look and they say to the person on the phone, the dog's just come in, and you can feel the atmosphere lift in the wards.
And do you have any examples?
A couple of people we visited particularly stand out in my mind. One was a lady who had had a stroke, and that had made her blind and deaf, so the nursing staff used to write on her forehead with their finger so that they could communicate.
Wow.
And she was in a side room, and we went in there and the speech and language person was there, and since she'd had the stroke, she hadn't been able to speak coherently, and she was able to speak lots of different languages, but nothing made any sense. And she also spoke quite loudly, obviously, because she couldn't hear. And we went in, and they suggested putting Rolo on the bed, bearing in mind she couldn't see, but she did love animals, they knew that. And we put him on the bed. Come here. And she felt, and she put her hand down, and in a really loud voice, so joyful, she said, "It's a dog, it's a real dog." And then up the end of the corridor where the nursing station was, we could hear cheering and clapping, because it was such a wonderful thing that it was the first time she'd actually said something that made sense. And after that, we went every week for weeks and weeks, so that was amazing. Another example is when I was contacted by the volunteer manager one evening if I could go with Rolo to see a patient who was dying. We went in the evening, and I remembered on the way there who he was. We'd seen him about 6 months before, and he was only 38. And we got there, he was in a side room, and I put Rolo on my lap, and he gave him lots of fuss, and obviously very, very sick. And then we went off again afterwards. I'm never sure how long to stay with a patient sometimes, but I always go by Rolo. He seems to know how long to stay with people. He's done that all the time. He knows when it's time to go, because you don't want to take him away too quickly, but I don't want to be, obviously the patients can't get away. The next week when I was in, the man had sadly died, which was obviously very, very, very sad. His wife put on Rolo's page, which was amazing. She said, seeing Rolo was one of the last things that made my husband happy.
Wow.
And every time I tell people, it sort of brings prickles to my eyes because he made such an impact, and what a lovely thing to say in public. Another example of something a bit different that Rolo did was when he helped somebody to eat. There was a patient who they'd been trying to get to eat and he wouldn't eat anything. And somebody was trying to feed him and I said, shall we try? So I sat with Rolo and I sort of did a deal with the patient. And I said, if you take a mouthful of your fish, you can give Rolo a treat. So he started to get some fish off his plate and tried to start giving Rolo the fish from the fork. And I said, well, no, you eat the fish and then you can give Rolo one of his treats. And so we did that and he ate the fish so he could give Rolo the treat. And then we did it again and he tried to give Rolo some fish off the fork. I said, no, you eat the fish and then you can give him a treat, because people really like to give him a treat. But I always say that Rolo has to do something for it. We did that 3 times, so the man had a bit of his lunch. So we thought that was a really good achievement.
Yeah. So Rolo was rescued from a puppy farm, so he wasn't bred to be a therapy dog as such. When did you realise that he could help other people?
All of the pets as therapy dogs, as far as I know, none of them are bred for it. It's just something that you can do as a pet owner if your dog's suitable, and mainly it's the temperament. Before we even had Rolo, before we ever had a dog, he's the first dog we've ever had because I've always been out at work. I'd always wanted to do, if we did ever have a dog, pets as therapy and in a hospital, because I just thought it would be so nice to share him a bit, knowing how much joy they bring. So when we adopted him from the RSPCA, it was something I had in my mind straight away. We went to a 6-week puppy class to start with, and then a much longer training course, only because we wanted to do it and it was fun. And the person that took the 6-week course, I told her I'd really like to do that, and she said, well, actually, I'm an assessor. So if I'm still doing it in 9 months, because I think they had to be about 9 months before they're assessed, 9 months to a year, I might be able to assess him. And that's actually what happened. So we went back to her when he was old enough, kept up with all the training that you do anyway with a dog. It's nothing special. And he passed straight away and we took it from there.
And you've had cancer while Rolo has been by your side. How has he helped you with your well-being?
He's very empathetic. He's very calm, but he can also be very energetic. He sort of adapts to where he is. So, for example, when we go to the hospital, he walks to heel. He's really, really calm. When we're out and about walking, he can be quite energetic, even at 10 and a half years old. But no, he's very, very calm. And when I came back from the hospital and I had nurses coming to administer things and check things, he would sort of sit there watching. And I had surgery in my arm as well to do with it. And he would sit near my arm, and animals can sense things, definitely.
So thank you, Claire, for joining us on The Daily Move. And
You're
thank
welcome.
you to Rolo.
It's our pleasure.